Trent Show. Thanks for watching this Wet Wednesday. I've been really excited about this program ever since we lined it up a couple of weeks ago because Phil Gover is here with me. Phil is really the mastermind behind a proposed charter school in Oklahoma City, but also part of a larger nationwide movement of not just charter schools. We're going to talk about some of these ideas about education. Phil, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Tell us, I mean, you were just in the paper on Monday morning. The Oklahoma City School Board rejected your charter school proposal, so you get to appeal to the state. Just real quick, sketch out for people, what is at stake here? What is this proposed charter school about?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm part of a group of local educators and community activists, all of us Native, who care a lot about the direction that our sort of Native community in Oklahoma City metro area is moving in. And if you look at Oklahoma City public schools, the graduation rate for Native students in our local school district, the largest school district in this area, hovers just a little bit above 50%. And it's the lowest graduation rate of any demographic group that the district tracks. So there's a huge issue going on in Oklahoma City public schools, and it is just that district too. I should add that, like, if you look at the surrounding districts in the suburban area, graduation rates for Native students are in the 70s or 80s. Yeah, actually, pretty average. You know?
I mean, the NAEP scores that just came out, that was one of the things that they were bragging on.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Superintendent Hoffmeister has been, I think, very, very outward in sort of highlighting those NAEP scores, and they look really good comparatively speaking. Statewide, exactly.
Not so much in
but when you focus in on Oklahoma City public schools, I think you get a slightly different narrative. And I think the need that we're really addressing is I think focused on something that is pretty invisible in a lot of people's day-to-day lives, and that's like the experience of urban Native people. We're trying to build a school that addresses and I think alleviates some of the challenges that urban Native youth have and face in our school system and in their everyday lives, and that's our target. That's who we're focused on, and that's who we built the school for.
So Oklahoma City Public Schools said no. You get to appeal to the state board, and they have. I mean, this has happened with other charter school proposals, and they've been successful. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But how did you get involved in all of this? I mean, this is the world of education. This is a pretty niche thing. I mean,
it is very niche.
Critically important to the students you're trying to serve, obviously. But Phil, how did you wind up here?
Gosh, so I moved to Oklahoma back in 2014. I finished my MBA at the Darden School of Business at University of Virginia. Came here to work for Teach for America and be the chief of staff for the statewide organization. So I was in that role for 2 years. In that time, living here in Oklahoma City, sort of became embedded in and a part of this greater Oklahoma City Native community. Saw a lot of the need. I have a son who's 12 years old. He's a middle school student at Dove Science Academy. I have 3 other kids who are going to be entering the school system in the next few years. So as a parent, caring a lot, who works in education, I care a lot about education. But I think a lot of the events really got set in motion the first time I visited the Native American Community Academy, which is a charter school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There's nothing like that school, and I think a lot of what we're going to do at the Sovereign Community School is some stuff that NACA did first, but more than anything, we wanted to create or sort of emulate the process that created that school and put a focus on indigenous community in a place like Oklahoma City, where we have thousands of Native kids and thousands of Native families, and the ability to support a community school in that way.
So what is it? I mean, let's talk about NACA a little bit, because it exists, it's real.
Totally.
And I think, some people say, oh, I've never heard of a school like this, this doesn't make sense to me. When somebody walks into NACA in Albuquerque, what is that like?
Oh gosh, so I think it's probably a little bit different depending on like your experience. Like if you're Native, it's singular. I think if you're non-Native, what's uncomfortable maybe about NACA is the way that school, the building, the kids, the teachers, the culture of the school forces non-Native people to conform to the expectations and cultural norms of Native people in a way that's really hard to describe, because that like never happens to non-Native people. And so to enter a building, to enter an educational space that has been created for you, like from my perspective as a Native person, I'd never had that growing up. I didn't have that when I lived on a reservation. I didn't have that when I went to college. Definitely didn't have that in graduate school. So to walk into a place that was designed for me as a learner, with me in mind, I mean, I imagine that's what it must be like to walk into school all the time for a lot of other people, but for me, it's a singular experience, and we want to create that experience for kids here in Oklahoma City.
Well, and I think that we are finally struggling in the United States, and I don't know what it's like in other places around the world, to get out of this idea that education is this. It's kind of like, you know, I think people think this about medical care. It's probably more true of medical care, that it's just a thing. Like, everybody's a person, and so it's just, if there's a right way to do education, that's going to work for you, regardless of your culture, regardless of where you live and all your experiences. That's right. And that's pretty silly, because education is grounded in community and values and all this.
Absolutely, so, yes.
I mean, talk about what this would mean in Oklahoma City, and I guess, you know, you can give a little preview. Maybe you're going to make this pitch to the state school board. Yeah. Why does Oklahoma need this now?
Yeah. So. If there was one thing I'd want to focus on more than any other thing that makes us truly unique and distinctive in the ecosystem of schools, and why we need this focus, I would say our school is going to develop curriculum and content with a special focus and perspective on Indigenous people and Native people in a way that the state has never seen before. But more than that, like, you can extrapolate our beliefs about community schooling and the foundation of education existing in the community and in local families. You can extrapolate that to any community, right? Like, you don't have to be Native to appreciate that. Like, you could be from anywhere and appreciate that. And what I think we really want to highlight is this notion that, like, for our kids, for Native kids, right? Like, when we learn about Native people, I think we mostly learn about them in history class, right? Like, history is where we think about Native people belonging. It's in the past. That's in a state like Oklahoma, where like almost 1 in 5 kids in public school is Native. Like, that's crazy. like why would we only have Native people in the history classroom, when with a little bit of effort, and I'm not saying it's easy, but with effort and with the right people dedicated to the task, you can take any aspect of any curriculum at any school level, any grade level, and you can make it more relevant to Native kids. You can make it more relevant to any kid. And and we have studies rooted in, you know, in sort of the academic tradition that show that, like, culturally relevant pedagogies cause the, you know, for kids, for low-income kids, for brown kids who are far behind in classes, like, you close gaps by having more culturally relevant, responsive education opportunities. That's what this school is. That's what our curriculum is going to be. And I think we're going to model, not just for Oklahoma City, but hopefully for the rest of the state. Like, you can take a more culturally responsive and relevant approach. We're not saying that you have to be like us and you know, do your entire curriculum that way, but, like, you can take a part of our curriculum and you can go use it in your classroom. And as long as you're bringing that, I think, that culturally relevant, community-focused mindset to your classroom, to your teaching practice, we think you're going to see really great results for kids. And so that, our confusion sort of stems from, like, everyone agrees these are great ideas. Like, why can't we just go do it?
Well, here's what I think is really exciting. And it's kind of it's the flip side of maybe why I'm anticipating, you know, maybe some of the feedback or things that viewers are thinking. Back to the point I made a minute ago, I want you to respond to this. I mean, I think a lot of charter schools are based on the idea, you alluded to this before we went live here, that we're going to find the better one way to do education. We're going to find the better one-size-fits-all way to build a school. And then once we have a charter school that works, we need to just go out and lecture all the other schools to be like that. Your school is not based on that idea.
Not based on that idea at all. And in fact, I mean, I think when you think about the ideas and I think the spectrum of policy ideas that exist in, like, school choice and education reform as ed reformers, I think there is a lot of that. Like, the way you build a charter school is you find the one thing you do and then you go and you build like 1,000 copies of that school, right? Like, I have no interest in building 1,000 versions of the school in Oklahoma City. Like, if anything, I think what we're doing is hard to scale. Like what we're trying to do and our approach and our beliefs about education and kids aren't things that are easily scalable. They're not things that are easily replicable. And the reason why that's true is because we care so much about designing schools that meet community needs, and every community has different needs. So every time you go and start a new school design project, whether it's working with a tribal community or working with some other community, you're going to get a different result. And your school, it's up to the designer, it's up to the team that's convening the school to know enough about the education landscape and what's out there in terms of curriculum, best practice, and operations and academic program to address those community needs. And so we think that like our whole orientation to the work isn't that like everyone needs to do things our way or they're no good. It's to say that so long as you're centering community in the way you think about schooling and education, like we want to work with you. And we don't care what your model is or what you think you do well or what you think you don't do well. If your orientation to the work is focused and centering communities, like we're allies and we need to work together.
Yeah. Well, I think that is where a lot of the ed reform community, not a lot, but some people in the ed reform community have fallen down because we so easily think that when we find one thing that works, that we can just we can airdrop it.
Yeah, like there's a silver bullet, right? Like, and if once we find that silver bullet, if all schools did that, we'll be fine. That's like never gonna happen.
It's so funny. So you have kids, I have kids. I mean, anybody with more than one kid knows, same family, same, basically the same DNA, the same parents, all that, and the kids are totally different. They have different needs. They have different experiences.
Totally. Yeah, and everyone, I think, a lot of people focus on like Scandinavian education systems, right, or like the education systems in Northern Europe, and they're like, oh, like if we can just do more things like them, we'll be great. The problem with that is that I think the United States, one, is set up in a totally different way, right? Like our education system in this country isn't funded federally. It's funded at the state and local level, and so there's a lot of state and local control. That's reflective of, I think, America's orientation, just in general, towards governance. But I think it's also reflective of a different mindset about kids and education, and it's also reflective of the fact that America isn't is not a homogenous group, right? Like we're a panoply of people and cultures that come from all over the place, and that's one of the things that makes us great. You're never going to design one system that fits all of the community needs for all the different people. And so, yes, the work that we're engaged in terms of like putting focus on community and saying every school has to be different because every school community has different needs, that's true. That's really hard to do. But like, man, like that's totally worth it. Like, we should, like, if we're gonna spend trillions of dollars on the education system of this country, like, we should be doing it in that way and stop trying to find silver bullets that will work for every community and every neighborhood because they don't exist.
I'm smirking when you mentioned Scandinavian schools because I was on Google Maps and I was looking around Norway. That's where I was looking at the communities where my dad's ancestors are from, many generations removed, and I'm like, that guy looks like my dad. That guy looks like my dad. And that guy looks like my dad too. Everybody looks like, and I mean, it's just how homogenous those societies are versus the United States of America versus Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
totally.
And it is, I think sometimes some of my conservative friends react so strongly against some of the things that they hear on the left about diversity and all. They forget that, I mean, there is tremendous strength in that and in the fact that it forced our Constitution to be set up in a way that's decentralized on things like education. I mean, that's why.
For sure.
So let's keep going and let's have even more, decentralization and the diversity that produces. What's the next step for your proposal?
So we file our appeal probably tomorrow or by Friday for sure.
Okay.
We understand the state board and the staff needs about a month to review that whole. I mean, they're reviewing a lot, so it's the whole submission record stretching back all the way from September until 2 weeks ago, right? So it's a ton of documents. We're handing that over. They'll review it. We're hoping that they'll vote during the May board meeting, which is I think Thursday, May 24th. Will be the date that the board puts us on the agenda and takes its vote. The way the process has worked in the past is I think we get like 20 or 30 minutes to present our ideas, and then I think the district gets a chance to respond and defend their decision, and then the board gets some Q&A, and then they make a decision. I think we believe that the application we wrote for this district is one of the strongest, sort of the most vigorous and efficient charter school applications ever created in the state. It's over 260 pages long. The academic program section alone is like 130 pages. That's meticulously documented, well researched and sourced. I mean, we're very proud of the document we created. I think for us, what was so frustrating in terms of working with Oklahoma City Public Schools is that like it never felt like our good faith was being met with like an equal amount of professionalism and good faith. It always felt like every time we'd kick the ball through the goalposts, the district would move the goalposts.
Yeah.
And so we'd kick the ball through the goalposts to say, hey, we got that, right? And it'd be like, no, this is a problem now. And that just played itself out, so many times in the process that like we got to the end. And we'd been asking for feedback on our budget, for instance, for like 3 months, and I hadn't seen barely anything on it. And then I get to the end of the process, and the budget team all of a sudden produces like a 5-page memo that totally takes apart our budget. And I'm like, where was this like 3 months ago? Like, you can't expect me in my team to make a document that's responsive to the district's concerns if they never share those concerns with us in a transparent and sort of forthright way.
Well, I was just reading about it in the paper on Monday. I was shocked, and then talking with you today. I mean, there are a lot of hardworking, well-meaning people in Oklahoma City Public Schools, for sure.
For sure.
But the comment that somebody made that, well, we've got to be really rigorous, and we've got to hold this proposal to the highest standards and all this, because these are other people's children we're responsible for, and they're graduating about 50% in Oklahoma. I mean, it just seems like maybe there's a little resistance to somebody else showing them up. And
it's probably part of that. I also think part of it is just that like the district's hemorrhaging kids.
Yeah.
Families are making a choice with their feet and with which zip code they choose to live in terms of the district. And what's unfortunate, I think, from my perspective, as someone that I think really sees a huge role for charters in the landscape in Oklahoma City and beyond, is like if your default orientation towards charters is adversarial, and then you get a hostile adversarial process, and then you wonder what happened, it's probably because of the way you approached the schools and thought about them to begin with, right?
And the district gets some benefit when they actually choose to be the authorizer rather than the state board.
Totally.
Right? I mean, that's the other part of this that's shocking is, I think the state board will do the right thing and you'll go forward, and
I think so too.
The local district then loses a certain.
Right. Now, like the opportunity for our school to be sort of a paragon for culturally responsive teaching within the entire district is put in jeopardy because Oklahoma City Public Schools can't find a way to get to yes.
Yeah.
Even though we keep
really
meeting and exceeding the bar. That was our hope from the beginning, was that like what we're proposing, it is a little weird, and we admit that, and like we want to have a conversation about that. But like it is rooted in like facts and ideas and research that shows that like if you do this, it works. And what we have in Oklahoma City is a problem with Native kids not staying in schools and not graduating.
50% graduation rate.
And if you go and look at NACA's graduation rate, the first class that they graduated took Albuquerque Public Schools' Native student graduation rate from where Oklahoma City's at right now to over 75%.
Wow. Yeah.
And they're only getting better as they've gotten older.
And your school proposal might be a little bit weird. Yeah. But sometimes I just want to sort of grab the proverbial man on the street by the lapels and say, but isn't it weird to have 50% of those students dropping out? Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that worse than weird? Isn't that a tragedy that we should be desperate?
Doesn't that demand urgency, right? Like you should be open to a lot of different ideas if your track record for failure for Native students in the district is that long and that bad.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of happy talk about like, oh, we love your ideas. And it's true, right? Like if you look at they evaluated our application on like 21 different focus areas. I would say net, in a process that we spent engaged maybe 7 or 8 months with the district, I think I had maybe 1 or 2 conversations about curriculum, content, even though like the weird stuff in our application is all in that academic program section. The district never.
So they were comfortable with the substantive part of the school.
They gave us perfect scores on all of those pieces. And instead, right, like we're focused on a debate with Oklahoma City Public Schools and their staff about our budget. Like, and I'm stuck on a phone call talking to a budget person on the district side who's giving me a 10-minute conversation hassling me over my diesel fuel forecast for 2022. But like, they couldn't even give me 10 minutes of discussion on like curriculum. And our curriculum is like not normal. So I went into the process thinking like, oh yeah, like we're gonna have to really know our stuff about how we develop curriculum and the frameworks we're using for school assessments and how we build all that stuff from scratch. I was ready to get into it.
Yeah.
we didn't even have to talk about it. And we spent all the time talking about budgets and facilities and transportation, even though charter schools don't have to provide transportation, even though we're going to be the only charter school in Oklahoma City that does offer transportation. Like, we got stuck on all of this other stuff that I think it was really telling for me as a parent within the district. And when you're trying to diagnose, like, well, what's wrong with our system? Like, what's wrong with like the system we have? Why does it keep getting the results it's getting? I think we have a lot of evidence from our experience in this process that, like, when you're not focused on the right things, when you're focused on the stuff that I think doesn't have a serious impact on how kids learn and how they close achievement gaps, you don't close an achievement gap in payroll taxes for your bus driver. But that's the stuff we talked about in our charter school application. And I don't want to poo-poo the idea that charter school finances aren't hard and need to be done right. They absolutely need to be done right. And we have recent charter school failures in this city that failed because of finances. Yeah. So I get where they're coming from there. But we have experts on both sides that say our charter school budget's fine.
Yeah. Well, and if somebody's putting together a business plan.
Yeah.
I mean,
totally.
You got to do a lot of other stuff.
And also some of it's forecasted, right? Like a lot of the numbers that we're talking about aren't actual numbers that are ever going to come true. Like the first thing I learned in budgeting when I took corporate finance in my MBA program was like, all of the models you build, they're all wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
None of them are right. All of this is for planning, right? Yeah. Like they're not actual going to be the numbers. Your revenue is not actually going to be that amount. It's going to be some other number, but you have to start somewhere. Yeah. And that's what we got. That's what we were fighting about. And it just feels so petty and beside the point when we're talking about, like, how are we going to turn around the district's graduation rate for Native kids?
Well, thankfully, Oklahoma State Board of Education has a better track record, I think, with charter schools. You're going to be there about a month from now.
Yep.
Phil Gover, thanks for joining me on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for what you're doing for the community.
Thank you. Yeah.